It was a great practice for our first day. It was spirited, and for guys to hang with me for that long of a practice says a lot about them. But it also gives me an inclination of where we can go, which is we can really improve pretty quickly, I think.
That was Rockets head coach Steven Silas down in Galveston as the Rockets officially opened up training camp and held their first practice of the 2021-2022 season. Good evening, everybody. Welcome yet again to the Fox 26 Sports Stream. As always, I am Sal Manine, sports producer here at Fox 26. We appreciate you joining us for the next half hour or so as we're going to talk about those Rockets and the start of training camp. Some big news on the injury front for the Astros as they are set to get underway in just a couple of minutes at Minute Maid Park against the Tampa Bay Rays. Final week of the regular season. We'll get you all updated on that. Then we'll also preview this weekend's Texans game as the Texans hit the road to visit the Buffalo Bills on Sunday. We'll speak with my good buddy Stephen Fonte from up there in upstate New York. He covers the Bills for ESPN Radio and for WSYR TV. So we'll get you squared away on all that as things roll along. And just a reminder, you can find us each and every week. We do this every Tuesday night on our Facebook page, our YouTube channel. Just search Fox 26 Houston in YouTube. And then, of course, you can always go to our website. That is fox26houston.com. And as always, we'll have the latest for you on Fox 26 News at 9. And our sports director, Mark Berman, has got you covered on Twitter. He is at Mark Berman, Fox 26. All right, starting with the Astros, first pitch in just a couple of minutes against the Rays. It's going to be Michael Wacha against Jose Urquidy. And there was some good news, bad news for the Astros during batting practice today. Manager Dusty Baker said that Michael Brantley is looking good. He should be activated in the coming days and is going to be a huge addition to this lineup because of everything he's able to do. And it's not just a lefty bat, but the fact that he is such a prolific hitter and can hit to all areas of the field. So it's something the Astros have certainly been missing in the last few weeks as he's been on the injured list. Losers of 4 straight coming in to tonight. The other good news is that Gary Pettis, third base coach, who had just come back into the mix a few weeks ago after his battle with multiple myeloma, had to shut it down because he contracted COVID. He's back. He's past all that, feeling very good. So great news on that front to see Gary Pettis healthy again and back at Minute Maid Park and working with the Astros. Some bit of bad news, though, and that is that Zach Greinke, it's looking like, is not going to be returning to the rotation. Remember, he had to go on the injured list after feeling some stiffness a few days ago. Dusty Baker says they're going to see about maybe he pitches a rehab game in Sugar Land later this week. But when Zach Greinke does come back to the Major League roster, it's looking like it's going to be as part of the bullpen, and that's where he would have to pitch for the postseason. Here's what Dusty Baker had to say to reporters earlier. It was Zach's idea to try to help us. He's not stretched out to start, so that's a very distinct possibility. During playoff time, you want as many veterans as possible that have been there. So take it for how you want. If you're a glass half full kind of person, you can say, hey, having a weapon like that out of the bullpen, a future Hall of Famer, a Cy Young Award winner, a guy who you know has great stuff, if he can come out of the pen and give you a good inning or 2 or 3 or be that piggyback, if you go with an opener or something like that, that's a valuable asset. If you're a glass half full kind of person, you're going, look how good and how important Zach Greinke has been to this team over the last 2 postseasons. And so to not have him to go out there in a pivotal game, as all games are in the playoffs, is certainly going to hurt. So it's kind of how do you want to balance one way or another what to make of Zach Greinke having to pitch out of the bullpen. We do know that the Astros have somewhat had a blessing in disguise, so to speak, with the fact that they've had to go with a 6-man rotation at times this year. Now it looks like that has somewhat been cleared up for Dusty Baker as to how he's going to have to try to stack the rotation for the postseason. You know who your starters are going to be, and now you have an elite arm that you can stick back there to possibly come out of the bullpen and give you some quality innings and what are going to be high leverage, the highest of leverage situations in the playoffs. And think back to when the Astros won the World Series in 2017, how valuable it was having guys like Charlie Morton and Lance McCullers Jr. come out of the bullpen, guys who are normally starters, who that's how they make their hay. And certainly there's a reason that you want them going out there every fifth day and being able to try to pitch 6, 7, 8 innings. But in the playoffs, when everybody is on a short leash as it comes to pitching, if you can have a guy like Zach Greinke who, yeah, maybe he's only going through the order one time, or maybe it's just coming in to try to give you one shutout inning, that can be huge. And so you stack him in that bullpen to try to set up Ryan Presley, who's been as good as any of the closers in baseball this year, certainly to your advantage if you're an Astros fan. But then obviously you're relying an awful lot on a lot of young guys to have to try to get the job done in the playoffs. Jose Urquidy was one of those young guys a couple years ago, and he was fantastic when he got called on to start in Washington against the Nationals. Luis Garcia is going to be a finalist for Rookie of the Year. Can he keep that up in the postseason? You know what you got from Lance McCullers Jr. Framber Valdez, everybody wondered what's he going to look like. And then last year, he was terrific for the Astros in helping them get to Game 7 of the ALCS. So something certainly to keep an eye on, as all indications are right now, Zach Greinke is going to have to pitch out of the bullpen to start the playoffs. So we'll have much more for you tonight on Fox 26 News at 9. And we'll also keep you updated as they've just gotten underway at Minute Maid. It is scoreless in the first inning. All right, you heard Steven Silas, Rockets head coach, off the top. The team officially kicked off training camp today. They'll spend this first week down at the St. Louis Resort, working out at the convention center in Galveston before coming back to Toyota Center to finish up training camp and then get into the preseason. Obviously, the big story with the Rockets is, well, there's two really. It's one, how do all these young new assets that the Rockets drafted or brought in last year, how do they continue to grow and develop? Guys like Jalen Green, the second overall pick, Alperen Şengün, who we should point out did not practice today because the team said he wasn't feeling well, not COVID related, but he was not out there for practice today. But it does not seem to be anything serious, as we know this far. He was taking part in media day and all the festivities that go with that yesterday. But you got Jalen Green, you got Şengün, you got Josh Christopher and Usman Garuba, all four teenagers, all four first-round draft picks that you're working into the mix of a team that was rebuilt on the fly last year. Jayshawn Tate, first-team all-rookie. Kevin Porter Jr., who midway to a little past the midway mark of the season last year, took over as the starting point guard and just continued to blossom in that role. Of course, had that 50-point game against the Milwaukee Bucks, becoming the youngest player in league history to drop a 50-pointer. How do all those guys continue to develop? That's going to be the big story for the Rockets this year. And then, of course, there's the elephant in the room, or rather the not quite so large elephant in the room, and that's John Wall, and what exactly is going to happen with him. We know that he's going to be a part of the team. He's going to be involved in workouts and practice. It's a role that he's embraced, but he will not play in any games, as both John Wall and his agents and his camp try to work with the Rockets to figure out a trade to somewhere where he can get time to play and likely wants to try to compete for a playoff spot and for an NBA title this late in his career. It's a lot easier said than done, though, because he still has 2 years and more than $90 million left on his contract. So that's why it's not so simple to just snap your fingers and say, John Wall's on the market. Everybody send me your best offers. Here's what John Wall and general manager Rafael Stone had to say about the whole situation yesterday. Again, the team held media day, and this was their chance to speak with reporters and what they had to say. It seems like all sides are saying the right thing, and there doesn't seem to be any animosity or ill will. It's just an awkward situation that everybody has to deal with for the time being.
Ever since I came here, everything's been professional. Just being with the organization and talking to Rafael and talking to Coach Silas, we just all came together to feel like it was the best decision for both parts of our team to decide to make that decision. But it wasn't easy. It was tough. But and my job here is to be like a mentor, be a leadership, try to teach these young guys like how the NBA goes, and be here and be a support system throughout the whole season. I still know how much I have left in the tank, and I believe in my abilities.
Yeah, let me jump in. I know how much he has left in the tank. John Wall's a basketball player who every single team in this would make every single team in the NBA better, and there's not a doubt in my mind about that, nor in the other GMs. Like, there's a whole lot of stuff that goes into constructing rosters and making everything work that has nothing to do with how good you are. No one questions how good John is.
So everybody says what needs to be said. And again, I don't think it's a matter of John Wall can't play anymore. He showed last year when he was out there, after basically missing 2 whole years, he can still be an above average, if not a very, very good point guard and playmaker. And to have the kind of veteran presence that he has entering his 13th year in the league, he can do a lot for a team that is looking to make that playoff push or to possibly get over that hump, be one of those final few pieces to try to make a deep run in the playoffs. It's just a matter of right now with his contract, the way it's set up, you're not going to find a whole lot of takers that want to take on a guard who is on the wrong side of 30 with a checkered injury history and is owed that much money. So Rafael Stone did point out yesterday that as of right now, the Rockets are not looking to buy out John Wall's contract. They don't feel like organizationally that necessarily is the right move for them. He also said he doesn't think it's the right move for John Wall at this point. And if you're the Rockets, again, you know that you are in the midst of a rebuild, and it's going to take some time to get back to where you want to get to in terms of being a team that contends for a playoff spot and to try to make a deep run. So if you have to sit there with John Wall on the books for a few more days, weeks, months, even this whole year, you can do that as opposed to having to shell out a ton of money just to buy him out right now. So we'll keep an eye on how things unfold on that front. I do want to get one more Rockets note in here before we transition and talk a little Texans. And that's, I mentioned Kevin Porter Jr. took over as the lead guard and just took that role and ran with it a season ago. Now he comes into this year established in the Stephen Silas offense and in this system. He says he's been told that he is going to be the starting point guard going into the year, and Kevin Porter Jr. could not be happier about how things have unfolded in his short Rockets career. Here's what he had to say about the growth that he's had to go through as a former highly touted recruit coming out of high school, a guy who thought everybody in the basketball world thought it was going to one and done and get to the NBA in a matter of minutes, and he was just going to jettison himself into the stratosphere of superstardom, and that wasn't necessarily the case when he got to Cleveland. Here's what KPJ had to say about how he had to pick himself up and how the Rockets helped him do that, is now he looks to be back on track and following the trend that so many people thought about when they saw this crafty kid play.
This organization, you know, saved my life potentially, so definitely a big fresh air. And I just love being here, and I want to be here for a while.
Kevin was asked why he said the Rockets potentially saved his life.
I needed a new scenery where I was at, and they picked me up when I was down. They didn't just, you know, pick me up and just toss me anywhere. They gave me love and gave me confidence in myself and motivated my motivation to, you know, make myself a better player and a person. They invested a lot in me, and I try to give them my all every day to repay them in some way. I'm just in a better space, better role, and I'm just being used better, I would say. I feel like the Believes, they both seen I could be a special talent, but, you know, Houston just knew how to utilize me and nurture me and take care of me, basically.
Kevin, who can be a star in this league, says the Rockets organization has helped him away from basketball as well.
What I praise to myself and what I praise to my family, just how I move, just how I interact with people, how I, you know, react when things hit the fan, knowing my worth, knowing my value, all that came with just being here because, I didn't know my worth or value where I was at before. My upbringing is different. So, basketball was kind of that escape. So when I was in, Cleveland, I couldn't really use it as an escape because that was kind of my most depression. So, like, coming here was literally like a 180 for me. So basketball, I can enjoy it again.
And big things are expected from Kevin Porter Jr. from the Rockets, not just this year, but going forward. He's a piece that they really believe can be a foundational piece to this franchise, especially when you put him alongside guy like Jalen Green in that backcourt. And again, just turned 21. So he, like so many of these Rockets, are very young. And now it's a matter of how quickly do they develop? How quickly do they continue to grow and mature? And you just heard from a guy who has had to learn that the hard way as a professional and has gone through his trials and tribulations, but says that everything about coming to Houston has helped put him on the right track as far as his basketball career. So we'll have much more on the Rockets and how things went down in Galveston today. That's coming up for you on Fox 26 News at 9. Do want to transition, talk a little bit about the Texans, obviously coming off that tough loss to Carolina. It was a game that really everything going into the game, and then even as kind of the game unfolded, everything that kind of could go wrong did go wrong early on for the Texans before they were able to rebound. Obviously having to play on a short week, having to go with not just your backup quarterback because Tyrod Taylor was going to be out for a month after he injured his hamstring, but you have to turn to a rookie quarterback. And then you saw that early on, the Texans were keeping things very simple, very vanilla for Davis Mills, and it really hampered them, despite the fact that the best player on the field, Carolina running back Christian McCaffrey, injured himself early in the first half, only put up 40 total yards before he had to shut it down for pretty much the entire second quarter and all of the second half. And the Texans unable to take advantage. When they did finally let Davis Mills loose, he was able to move the ball through the air, was able to move the chains, led the Texans on a touchdown drive, made it a game, and it was closer in the fourth quarter than the final score might indicate, but that's something that head coach David Culley did admit that they were perhaps trying to protect Davis Mills a bit too much early on, and so that's why this week as they hit the road, they are going to open things up a little bit more, but it's going to be another very tough task for the rookie because he just faced a top-notch defense on Thursday, taking on the Carolina Panthers. And now Sunday, he has to go on the road to a place in Buffalo that when it's packed, and that's how it's been the last couple of years now that the Bills have kind of hit this renaissance and are having some of the best years they've had since the Jim Kelly days. It's a very tough environment to play in, and that is an elite defense and a team that a lot of people have on the short list to possibly go to the Super Bowl and at the very least vie for an AFC championship game berth. So there's a reason why I think last I checked, the Texans are 16.5-point underdogs as they head up to Orchard Park to take on the Buffalo Bills. It'll be a Sunday afternoon, noon kick here Central Time.
Well, that's a very good football team. That's a playoff caliber football team. They're very good in all phases, offensively, defensively, and special teams. They've been very consistent. It's a well-coached football team that's got a lot of good football players on it.
All right, let's delve deeper into this matchup with the Buffalo Bills with somebody who's watched far more of them than I have, grew up watching them, suffered through the early 2010s, and now covers a resurgent Bills squad for ESPN Radio and News Channel 9 WSYR. Stephen Fonte, how you doing, my man?
I'm doing well, Sal. Always great to talk to you. How are things with you?
Doing well. On the NFL side of things, it's kind of rough for folks here in the city of Houston after losing Tyrod Taylor, having to watch the growing pains of a rookie. But I imagine you know all about that, having covered and been to so many Bills games in your lifetime. What's it like now that the expectations are there for this is a team that a lot of people think should be in the AFC title game, if not the Super Bowl.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And I think that was one of the question marks coming into this season, Sal, is how would they handle success? Because for so many years, let's face it, going back really 20, 25 years, this franchise has struggled since those 4 straight runs to the Super Bowl. How would this team, they had a taste of success last year, how would they handle it? And if we're being honest, I don't think they handled it all that well in the opener. They got off to a good start, but they only led Pittsburgh 10-0 at the half. And I remember saying at halftime of that game, I don't have a great feeling like they should be up by 3 scores. They were only up by 10. And then sure enough, they played poorly in the second half and gave that one away. But it might end up being the best thing that could happen to that team. Maybe it was a wake-up call. They've looked really good these last 2 weeks against Miami and Washington. And granted, it's just Miami and Washington, and I know that. But they do look more like the AFC contender that we thought we were going to see this season than they did in the opener.
And I think that certainly starts with Josh Allen at quarterback. I mean, last week was the bounce back game for him. I would know he's my fantasy quarterback. What's it been like as far as the reaction with did not look good in that opener, didn't really get a sense of what he was doing in week 2 because they were blowing out the Dolphins and the Dolphins had their own issues. But this past week, he looked like the MVP candidate who just got that big contract extension.
He did look like that MVP candidate. And you mentioned he's on your fantasy team. I actually went up against him this past week, so that did not bode well for my team. Still rooting for the Bills well, but I could have done without the 5 touchdowns from Josh Allen. But you know what, Sal? I was impressed with the way he handled that loss against Pittsburgh because he did not play well. The team did not play well. There was all these expectations and, first game with fans, in Buffalo. And you felt like, man, they're going to win this game by 100. And then they go out and they lay an egg, and he laid an egg in that game. And afterwards he said, it's just one game. Like, we know it didn't go the way anybody wanted to, but we're not panicking. And there was a lot of panic that week. Like, trust me, like growing up watching the Bills week in and week out, like I know how this fan thinks. And, there was a lot of, here we go again type of thing. He said, you know what? It was one game. We'll make the necessary adjustments. We're going to be okay. And you're right. He didn't have to win that game down in Miami. The defense played great. They got ahead and they were able to play with that lead. But he looked like the MVP candidate that I believe he is on Sunday against Washington. He's got so many weapons. When you look at this offense, I mean, not only does he have this great relationship with Stephon Diggs, but Cole Beasley working out of the slot. He continued to feed him the ball last week. I think the addition of Emmanuel Sanders and to give them another option of somebody who can take the top off of defense. They're still working on the running game. I think, if we get to that in this segment about what the question marks are, I think that might be my biggest question mark with this team, or certainly the offense, is will they be able to run the ball enough to be successful this season. But, Josh Allen, the knock on him coming out of college was he's not accurate. And how is he going to do in this wind? And, the experts were wrong on that because he has been accurate and his accuracy has continued to get better year by year. He's continued to develop. And, I think the Bills finally, after, 2.5 decades, they have found their quarterback in the future. It very much is Josh Allen, and I think he's going to be in a Bills uniform for a very long time to come.
Let's get into then some of those struggles, few though they may be for a team that has Super Bowl aspirations. The Texans were without 2 key starters on defense in their Thursday night game against Carolina. They caught a break with Christian McCaffrey going out early because of injury. What does it do, though, for this Bills offense if, like you said, they struggle to establish the run at times? And that's something that has been a point of emphasis for the Texans because they were among the worst ever in NFL history in stopping the run a year ago.
Yeah, they're not going to beat you on the ground, Sal. They need to do enough on the ground so that they're not one-dimensional. But if they are one-dimensional, Josh Allen is good enough, and those receivers, I didn't even mention Dawson Knox, who is off to a good start this year from the tight end position. I mean, they have so many weapons that Josh Allen can throw the ball to that if they happen to become one-dimensional, I think they'll be okay. And I do think they'll be okay in this game against the Texans. But in order to beat the better teams in the AFC, after the Texans, they've got the Chiefs and the Titans in back-to-back weeks. In order to win those games, they're going to need to be more than just one-dimensional. So it is an issue with this team. I mean, Devin Singletary's been okay this year. He's averaging about 60 yards per game on the ground. It's good enough at this point, but if you truly want to be a Super Bowl contender, and once you get into the bad weather games in November and December, and there are plenty of those when you play in Western New York, and let's face it, if the Bills have a gaudy record this year, they're going to be a high seed. So they may be playing really important games in poor weather. You're going to need to be able to run the football. You're going to need to have a good defense, which they do. You're going to need to be able to run the football, which I think, the jury is still out. It's early in the season, but I think the jury is still out about whether or not they can do enough in the ground game to win those games later on in the season.
You brought up that after this, they have the Chiefs, who, despite their record, I think we all still believe that Patrick Mahomes and company will be there at the end of the season vying for a Super Bowl spot. Is there any potential for a trap game given what is on the horizon, given that they're facing a rookie quarterback in Davis Mills? They're more than a 2-touchdown favorite at home. Is there any chance of that? Or, as you alluded to earlier, was that week 1 loss to what is looking like a struggling Pittsburgh Steelers team, was that really the wake up for Buffalo?
I think there's absolutely a chance that it's a trap game. And I think, as you look around the NFL right now, there have been a lot of upsets already, or what we perceive as upsets early in the season. I mean, look at how bad the Packers looked in their opener. And then the Packers are like, just kidding, we're going to be just fine. And they win the next 2. And Aaron Rodgers, it looks like he's the Aaron Rodgers of old. So yes, there's absolutely that chance that this is a trap game. However, you alluded to it right there, Sal. I think there is less of a chance that this is a trap game because of what happened against Pittsburgh. I think that was their wake-up call to some degree. And I think that they're going to be reminded of how important this 3-game stretch is. They're thinking big picture, right? I know that all coaches and players say, it's all about the next game and the next opponent. And that's true when they're focused on the Texans, but they're also thinking big picture. They're thinking number 1 seed in the AFC, especially with the Chiefs already having lost twice. So in order for this game against the Chiefs to truly mean what they want it to mean, they got to take care of business in these games that they're supposed to take care of business in. So, there's a chance of it, but I think there's less of a chance given the fact that they gave one back against the Steelers. I do think they're going to be a focused team come Sunday, and I fully expect the Bills are going to win this week.
Now, the Texans have said they do want to open up the playbook a little more, or at least let up on the reins with their rookie quarterback. Very vanilla early on for Davis Mills against Carolina, but once they started to let him loose, he was able to do some positive things. It's a much different task, though, going up against a Sean McDermott defense. We know that's his bread and butter. Just what is he in for as a rookie going on the road to when it's packed in Orchard Park? It can be one of the toughest places to play in the AFC.
Yeah, and you look at what the Bills have done against quarterbacks so far this year. We'll leave kind of Big Ben out of it in the opener, but in the second game, they knocked Tua out right away. And then in the game right after that, they don't have to face Ryan Fitzpatrick, who was obviously knocked out with injury. Yes, they gave up a few touchdowns, but that game was well in hand by the time Washington scored, and then Washington recovered kind of a fluky kickoff situation, then scored again right after that. But that really wasn't the defense's fault. The defense has been really solid the last 2 weeks. And honestly, even against Big Ben and the Steelers, the defense played great. That game turned really with the Bills offense making some mistakes. There was a Josh Allen fumble. Then there was a strange 4th down call where the Bills got stopped. And they also had a punt block that the Steelers took back for a touchdown. So I don't put that first loss on the Bills defense at all. And they have been lights out really these last 2 weeks. So, I think he's in for a tall order. You've got Tre'Davious White, who is arguably, I don't think there's any argument about it, one of the best corners in the league. And that defense has improved. They needed to address pass rush in the offseason, which they did in the draft. They pick up Boogie Basham and Greg Rousseau, both out of the ACC. And Rousseau has made a presence and an impact already so far this season. So the pass rush has gotten better. I think that their secondary is rock solid. And they've been a really good unit. As you said, with a Sean McDermott coach team, you expect a quality defense, and the Bills have just that this year.
So then lastly, if the Texans do have any hopes of pulling off an upset, I think I checked earlier, the line is up to Bills minus 16.5. If you're a rookie quarterback and you're going to go on the road and pull off an upset like that, what has to go right from a Houston perspective? What are the keys to possibly stealing one against the Bills?
Yeah, I mean, I think, for me, I go back to what happened in that opener against Pittsburgh. I'm not sure Pittsburgh is an upper echelon team in the AFC, and they went into Buffalo and they knocked them off. And how did they do it? Well, Buffalo contributed to it. I think if the Texans win this game, it's going to be in part because the Bills contributed to that. And again, in that opener, there was a fumble by Josh Allen. That has been one of the knocks against him, Sal, that he is loose with the ball from time to time. So maybe they force a fumble early, force a turnover early, and they're able to cash in. They have a game-changing play on special teams, like the Steelers had, a block punt that they took back for a touchdown. The Bills contributed to that loss. I think, if the Bills play their B game, regardless of what the Texans do, I think the Bills are winning that game at home. And again, this is a Super Bowl contender. If the Texans, though, can play their A game and force the Bills into some mistakes, then I think that they have a chance. But it's a tall order. I mean, I think, you and I would agree that the Bills are probably a top 5 team right now in the NFL, in whatever order you want to put them in. I think the Rams right now have established themselves as maybe the best team in the league. But after that, there's a whole lot of good teams. I mean, the Bucs might be the second best team. They have a loss. The Bills have a loss. Chiefs have 2 losses. I think they're all in that conversation for top 5. So, I think a lot's going to have to go right for the Texans. A lot has to go wrong for the Bills in order for Houston to pull off this upset.
Well, we will all find out Sunday at noon Central Time up there in Orchard Park. He covers the Bills and a whole lot more for ESPN Radio and News Channel 9 WSYR. Follow him on Twitter. Stephen Fonte, thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you again soon, man.
All right, thanks, Sal. Appreciate it.
Obviously, when you have a team and a quarterback of explosive players that put up a lot of points, you want to the number one defense for that is the offense that's sustaining the ball, moving the chains, and keeping them on the sideline. So I think that'll be a big point of emphasis for us. It always is a big point of emphasis for us, being able to stay ahead of the chains, being able to control the ball, being able to make first downs and sustain long drives and score touchdowns in the red zone, not field goals. Those are all things that kind of help you, when you have an explosive offense on the other side.
That was Mark Ingram discussing the importance of the run game, something the Texans have not been able to get going through 3 games, ranking in the bottom 5 of the NFL in just about every meaningful rushing category. And that's the best way to try to keep Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, and that high-powered offense that just dropped 40 on the Washington football team. That's how you keep them at bay, is keep them on the sideline. So it's going to be a very tall ask for Davis Mills and the Texans this Sunday. All right, one quick update on the Astros. They are in the 2nd inning, and the Stros are losing 2-0. Yandy Diaz with a 2-run homer off Jose Urquidy in the 1st. So we will have the latest on that for you coming up on Fox 26 News at 9. Is the Astros' magic number coming into the night was 2, meaning they could clinch the AL West if they win, and then Seattle loses. They're on the West Coast, though, visiting or hosting Oakland, so that game likely not to end until after midnight Central Time. But right now, the Stros playing from behind, down 2-0. We'll have much more on the Stros, much more on the Rockets, everything that is going on with them as they get underway at training camp, and then a familiar name on the hardwood making his debut with a new team here in Houston. We will have that story for you coming up tonight on Fox 26 News at 9. As always, be sure you're following our sports director, Mark Berman, on Twitter. He is at Mark Berman, Fox 26. We'll do this again next Tuesday night, 7 o'clock. Again, just find our YouTube channel, search Fox 26 Houston on YouTube, or go to our Facebook page, or, of course, our website, fox26houston.com. My thanks to Stephen Fonte from ESPN Radio for joining us. And for all of us here at Fox 26, I'm Sal Manine. We'll see you again next week.